I'm Jan Brett. I'd like you to meet a friend of mine, a new friend I just met today whose name is Storm. He's a Siberian husky, and that is one of my favorite kinds of dogs because they're so beautiful and regal, and they are always so full of fun. And we had a pet Siberian for many years, and Storm is both. He's a pet and he's also a champion show dog, so you can see how beautiful this dog is, and I want you to notice the arch of his neck. He's so proud. I'd like you to come into the art studio with me so I can show you how to draw a Siberian husky. And it probably won't be as pretty as Storm is, but we'll try. Okay, come on, Storm, you want to go inside? No, he doesn't want to go inside. He wants to see the chickens and ducks. Okay, good boy. I know there's something awful good to smell by that bird feeder, huh? Come on, sweetie, come on. Come on, Storm. We're going inside. In you go. I'm going to draw you now. You're such a good dog. I'm in my art studio, and Storm is wandering around here, and I would like to draw him for you, and you can follow along with your pencil, or you can remember it, because I would like to show you how to draw a dog. Now, dogs come in all shapes and sizes, but I chose the Siberian Husky because they appear in my book so much. And I'm going to start with this with a marker, and normally I would use my watercolors, and it takes me an hour just to do an inch. So this is going to be my fast way, and it might look a little different than the illustrations in my book. But this is really a lesson for you. I'm going to start with a couple of shapes, and then I'm going to take this paper off that shows the shapes and then really draw the dog. And this is just to get you thinking about the proportions. And I'm going to draw a rectangle, and you can do this too. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I would do this in pencil because then you can erase these lines afterwards. And then right in the middle of that, halfway down, I'm drawing a little guideline, because this is where his back is going to be here, and then his stomach is going to be here, and then his legs are down here, and that's about the proportions. And his tail's going to be on this end, and where his head's going to be, I'm just going to draw a little square. Well, I'm using this marker because it will show up on camera. That's why I'm doing it. And because that's where his head's going to go, and his face is going to go down there. But where his neck comes out of this area where his back is, I think it will be helpful for you if you just draw those two shapes, just to start with. I'm going to take those away because I think you probably have done that. And then we can get into the fun part. And then I'm going to fill it in with painting it afterwards. Now, Storm's real name is Carnavanda's heir to the throne, and he is a champion, so champion should have started that, huh? Good boy. And he belongs to Beth and Matt Crooks, and they live in the Washington, D.C. area, and they show their dogs. And Beth was nice enough to drive all the way up to Norwell, Massachusetts, where we live, so that Storm could have this visit with us. And he's a gray and white Siberian, and so that's what I'm going to draw for you today. But if you wanted to have fun with color, this is one of the dogs. It's an Inuit, a Greenland Inuit dog that we saw up in Baffin Island, and that has the red coloration. This one does too. So if you wanted to make more than one drawing, you could use some of these other colorations, which just means what color they are. They can come in red and black, pure white, and this gray, which is really almost like a silver. It's very, very beautiful. So I'm going to start with that box shape and draw his tummy. And then where his neck comes out, it forms an arch. They have a very proud look, the Siberian Husky. And I want you to put that arching shape in there. And then the ears are very small and pointed. And I'm going to show his face, not exactly from the side, but turned a little bit towards the camera so that you can see one of their most beautiful features, which is they have a mask of darker fur around their eyes. And they have almost like a smile. And this is black. Their lips are black. And often their tongue would be out. But I'm not making his tongue out. But you can see how I've got the arching coming up, and then the little ears, the small, very small ears. And you can think about that in a cold climate, how it would be good to have small ears covered with fur, because then they wouldn't get too cold. And then their eyes are almond-shaped, which means it's almost like a little triangle. Here, I'll draw one over here that's bigger. They're kind of slanted. And Storm's eyes are dark brown. And when you draw the eye in the pupil, leave a little white mark for the sparkle. And his are brown, but our dog, Perky Pumpkin, had one blue eye and one brown eye. And sometimes Siberians have two blue eyes. So if you'd like to use your different colors. And then around their face, they have like a little bit of a furry ruff. So I'm just going to indicate that with a little bit of strokes showing that thick, thick fur. And you can even make a little mark around its mouth showing its smile. And then the nose is very black. And sometimes when the Siberians are in the snow, where they like to curl and make a little nest and they stay warm that way, and sometimes all you see is that little black nose peeking out. And then here's where his mask begins, which is a little bit darker. And you'll see that when I do the painting on top. So there's his little mask. We better put an eye, and he looks a little bit like a ghost dog without his eye. And there's his little nose. I try to get that shape just right. And then he has a little bit of I think those are called his withers. It's a little bit wider up here, from here to here. And then this is all thick fur. And then about halfway down, I've made this line halfway down. And there's his first front leg with his paw. And what is a strong animal. You think about how beautiful they are, but these dogs will pull and pull and pull. They're a working breed. And many times in the north, these dogs have saved lives by being able to transport goods, medicine, food in places where no other vehicle could go. Even planes couldn't fly there because it would be too cold and windy. And they have an unbelievable sense of where it's safe to travel. They can go over ice and then they might stop because they think that the ice is weak there, and they have this like understanding about their environment that probably a lot of dogs don't have, and makes them good sled dogs. Now this is probably the hardest part, because the back leg comes down. Let's see, I'm going to make a line here. Well, we'll make snow. And then it forms a little angle at the bottom. And I think I've even made that a little bit too long, but I think it'll be okay for now. And then the second leg, I'm not going to have go down quite as far to show that it's further away. And the Siberian has lots of fur between his toe pads because that helps keep his feet warm when he's traveling over the ice and snow. I'm just laughing because Storm is exploring my art room. And, he's not at all interested in his portrait. And under all this thick fur, of course, are very strong muscles because they are a very strong dog. And then his tail is curled up because he's looking at something and waving his tail. And they probably look at each other's tails to see what their body language. One dog is looking at another dog to see their body language. And I think if the tail is up like that, it probably means that they're happy and interested in looking at something maybe far away. And then he has what is called a bar, which is a little bit of a darker fur right on top of his nose. And I'm trying to indicate all that thick fur. They almost have like little pants in the back of thick fur. And now I think I'm ready to color him in. And before I do, I just wanted to point out, here's the first dog. And this is the story of a paleo wolf, which is one of the ancestors of the dog. And they have some of the same features that a Siberian has, the pointed ears and somewhat the same coloration. They're extinct now. But I used my Siberian Perky Pumpkin, her personality, her expressions, I put on the paleo wolf. So she was kind of a model for it. And then this is another Siberian Husky that was used for trouble and trolls. Not my dog necessarily, it was my friend Lee Sarah's dog. And so she has Callie and is her dog, and Arthur. And I was able to use pictures for that dog. So I'll get my watercolors and we can color him in. I'm going to start by mixing a little bit of a light gray color, which is black with a little bit of water in it. It's even got like a little bit of a blue tinge, and I'm using one of my big brushes, and I'm just going to slowly outline him so he has some depth. Every bit of his picture that is at the edge, I'm making a little darker. It's shading. And then this little ear I'm covering completely with the gray because I want it to look like it's further away. I don't want him to look like a flat dog. I want him to look like a round dog. So just going around the edge is going to make him look a little bit rounder with this shading technique. And I think that when you do this with your drawings, you could do it with a person, with an animal, with an object. And I think you might be kind of pleased at how quickly it makes something go from looking flat to just looking round. I'm just kind of softening that edge there. What do you think, Storm? So Storm's owners are Beth and Matt. And they show these dogs, which takes a lot of care, but it's like they have 5 best friends that live at their house all the time. They enjoy that very much. And now this back leg is going to get that shading, so it looks like it's further away. And he's going to be in some snow, and I think I'm going to have some fun with that snow in a few minutes. Now, before I put in his light gray color, I'm just going to take my brush and get a little bit of this gray color and go in and do a few of these details. His eyes, just going very lightly around his eyes. And there's his muzzle and this little smile mark there. And then this thick fur coming down, which forms a ruff around his face. And you can imagine in the cold temperatures how the thick fur would keep him warm. And he has an undercoat, and then on top of that are guard hair, so it keeps him very warm. And most dogs don't have those 2 coats, but a wolf, well. And they probably are the closest relatives of the dog, a dog breed is probably the closest to the wolf. I would guess that. There's the Malamute, which is a little bit bigger, the Siberian Husky, and Greenland Inuit dog, and then there's a kind of breed called the Eskimo dog, and they're very similar. And they're all used for pulling and are able to survive in these very, very cold temperatures. And we couldn't believe when we were on Baffin Island that the dogs stay outside in the snow all night long and they don't come into the house at all. And as a matter of fact, the minute they come into a house, they start panting and start making a big whining noise. They want to go back outside because they like that cold. And they very rarely bark, this breed. They like to make a talking noise. They kind of go, but they don't, they might do one bark when they see something that frightens them, but they're not a barking dog. And the other thing about them, you'll laugh, but they have no doggy odor. They smell very good. So now his shading is pretty much done for this drawing, because if I was at my art studio, I would spend hours doing all of this. And so I'm going to use that light gray color, which is a little bit darker over his withers. I mean, that's what you call it with a horse. I'm not sure about a dog. And a little bit over the saddle area right here in the back. And then, this is something really cool that wolves have. Whoops. Wolves have, and I don't think any other dog except for the Siberian type working dogs have this. They'll have a little dark spot right here on his tail. And in the wolf, that's where there's a scent gland, but the Siberian does not have a scent gland anymore. And then here's his mask, which would be very typical of the breed. And when you see a dog being walked or in a photograph, and they have that little mask, you think, wow, that's probably a Siberian Husky. And when you're making up your own dogs, you might want to have them pulling a sled, or it's called a Kodatik up in north. You could have different colored dogs. You could make this jet black on the top. You can make it this reddish color. You can make him pure white, or you can have him gray. But then the underneath, his legs and his tummy would be white. And then right on his chest here, that would be white too. That's just the way they look. And sometimes if you'll see a sled dog team, if they have a different color, it's because they've been bred to another breed. But the purebreds will have this same coloration. You might have a little color coming down here. And then like right there too. Well, I asked Beth if this color was called silver because it almost looks like it's, whoops, that's a little dark. Well, this doesn't look exactly like Strum because he's not this dark, but he could pass as a Siberian. I just got a little bit too much paint on my brush. And if I was in my art studio, I am not afraid to use the eraser or to cover something over with white, or use a little water to erase it. Because everybody makes mistakes when they're drawing, so don't get frustrated if you have to start again. The main thing is using your creativity, and when you look at something and observe it, it's a way of learning. And now I'm going to make a little bit of this blue color around his paws as if he's standing in the snow. So the snow's maybe a couple of inches deep. We just have a dusting today. But if we did have a lot of snow, Siberians love the snow, and they could spend the whole day out there, and they'll just play and play and play in the snow and bury themselves in it. And their favorite thing is to stick their nose in it and see what's underneath it. And then I'll show you how to make some footprints. Let's say he's just walked from a different direction. And what you can do is first make this like little circle and then darker underneath, and it will look more realistic like that. And then he would probably be casting a shadow. So I'll again use some of this lighter kind of bluish gray color to go underneath him. And that just makes him look like he's grounded. And then we'll see that we have some snow in the background. And then he does have brown eyes, make his eyes brown. So far, the only colors I've used are gray, blue, and brown. I should have had his mouth open so that we could have a pink tongue. Maybe I'll have it coming out the other side. So we get another color in there. And maybe a little bit in his ear that you can see. He has got so much thick fur, you really can't see any pink in his ears. But our Siberian, you could see a little pink in his ears. So I'm just going to add this little tongue hanging out the other side. Just thinking about getting his breath back. And let's see, I'm just going to use a little bit more of this darker color to do some of his fur. And his tail is so thick that the fur stacks up almost as if it's something that's thick and heavy. And then here's that same technique on the back leg where it's very thick. And then I can just make some thick strokes here to show his fur, how fluffy he is. I mean, you could stick your hand in his fur and it would practically disappear. Well, I hope